This story needs to get out. It needs to be heard. This will be a shorter video, but I think it's important. It does not have a religious component to it, except how it relates to the Ruby Franke situation. And that connection and how those two things are related are very upsetting and disturbing to me, and so I'm hoping something will be done. Let's get into it. Welcome to True Crime, Faith, and Chocolate. I'm your host, Annette Lyon, USA Today bestselling author of Just One More, the suspense novel, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And I don't know if I've ever done this before, but that shelf right here, that's some of my bunch of other stuff. Also, True Crime Junkie, Chocoholic, Woman of Faith, all that good stuff. So, as I think it bears repeating, alas, that I'm not evangelizing, trying to convert anybody. I am not trying to defend or anything else, my faith or anyone else's. I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So far, that's most of the cases I've covered has dealt with my faith or people who are behaving badly, who claim to have my faith. But if I am bringing in religion, as I will do, I'm explaining and giving a perspective that you will not get somewhere else. Like with the Daybell case, there were a lot of things dropped in trial that if you're not part of a culture, you're just not going to understand what the deeper levels are or what that reference means on a bigger scale and that kind of thing. So I'm explaining and adding insight. I'm not evangelizing. So, and to those who are anti or X or whatever, and to the Smith XY, don't troll. Thank you. Be kind to everybody, whether or not they are a person of faith, or of a different faith, or of no faith. So, moving on. Today, we are talking about the tragic death of 12-year-old Gavin Peterson. It's an upsetting case, and I will try to be careful with the words that I use so that we can abide by all the YouTube things, but I think we need to talk about it. And I feel like Murphy's Law is like there's something out there trying to prevent this video, because I actually recorded it yesterday. All my audio testing and everything was just fine. And then throughout recording, the sound seemed to be going just great. And then when I got to edit it, the sound was just all over the place. It was unsalvageable. No! So let's hope it works this time. Because the story of Gavin Peterson. He lived in West Haven, Utah, which is roughly 50 miles north of Salt Lake City, and was in the Weber School District. He lived with 3 adults. His father, Shane, he was 46, or I should say is 46. His stepmother, Nicole, and her last name is Scott. So I don't know if it was a legal stepmother or if it was called stepmother and it wasn't technically legal. I don't know. She's 50, so a few years older than Shane Peterson. And then Shane's other son, Gavin's older brother, who was 21, named Tyler Peterson. So Tyler and Gavin have a pretty good age difference, 12 to 21. Now, we do know that Gavin has some older siblings, which I'll get to again in a moment. Don't know how many or ages. I'm suspecting that there are some minors that are somewhere in between the two because it is such a big gap. So if he has siblings, there may be some in there. The story, as I knew it and the public learned of it, began on July 9th, when a 911 call was placed from the home saying that Gavin was not breathing. Nothing I have read and come across has said who the caller was. We know that Tyler was texting his father about that time, asking what should I do because Gavin's not breathing. So I suspect that the caller was either Tyler or Nicole, the stepmom. Don't know for sure, but Shane at least showed up on the premises shortly because he was there when emergency services were there, at least for part of it. All 3 of them were there eventually. Medical crews, they show up and they are told by Shane, again, father, and Nicole, stepmother, that Gavin had been sick for several days. He'd been throwing up and just really, really sick. They later say, oh yeah, and I think this might have been even when he was finally brought to the hospital, but eventually they admit, yeah, he was also having some seizures. Well, did you take him to the hospital or to a doctor? No. What? We find out that Gavin was found on the bathroom floor. His skin was cold to the touch and wet. Nicole says that she found him covered in vomit in the morning. I think she might have even said in bed, which was a lie because he didn't have a bed. And she assisted him to the shower so he could clean up. Now, based on what we learned later, I think that's a load of crap. But if Gavin's not breathing, they're panicking at this point. We know that Tyler was, as I said, texting his father about this time, saying, what should I do? What should we do? Now, also about the same time of the 911 call, and this is why I suspect the call might have been Nicole placing it, because Tyler seems to be busy. He's texting his father, and we find out he made 3 trips outside. This is with camera footage. Don't know or if it's even been reported, if we know publicly or not, if this was family cameras or neighbor cameras, but cameras caught him going outside 3 times, and 2 of those times he was carrying something into a shed out back. Now, police later found in that shed family security cameras that were from the inside the house that Tyler had been trying to hide. More on that in a moment. Gavin is brought to the hospital, but his organs had just shut down from malnourishment. And here's where I have to be careful, avoiding saying the A word, but he had been horribly treated. And the doctors could tell that that was the reason for his passing. His body just shut down. And that's when an investigation in earnest began. And yeah, we learned all kinds of things. One thing we learned, among many, is that Gavin was removed from school August of 2023. So at the very beginning of this last school year, he was removed after attending a school within the Weber School District for the previous school year. I believe that's the photo that we have of him. This is from the GoFundMe that was set up. I have to assume it's the most recent school picture they have, which would not be from this last school year, which would mean he would be 11 most likely in that photo. Is it just me, or does he look about 7? I mean, he already looks tiny and malnourished. The only reason he looks a little older is he has some teeth growing in that maybe hint that he might be slightly older, but he is already looking small. But look at that smile. Just a sweet, sweet boy. You can just tell. But he was withdrawn from school August of 2023. An adult signed an affidavit at the school saying that he was going to be homeschooled. Okay, all well and good. There are good reasons to homeschool. There are bad reasons to homeschool. There are people who do homeschooling very well. There are those who do not. So is a case of do not. He was withdrawn from school after several school employees called DCFS with concerns about this very student, saying they believed he was being mistreated, neglected, and at home. The family says, oh, then in that case, we're just going to homeschool. This is part of the statement that Weber School District released after these events. The student, of course, they won't give a public name, but we know it's referring to Gavin. The student had previously attended school in our district during the 22 to 23 school year, as I said. At the start of the last school year, the student was withdrawn from school by a guardian who completed an affidavit for homeschool. So I assume that would be his father or stepmother. This is the part that really upsets me. This essentially ended our contact with the student and terminated any authority the district had related to their education. And then they admit, a little later in the statement, quote, prior to the student being withdrawn from the district, multiple complaints were filed by school employees with the Utah Division of Child and Family Services related to suspected abuse and neglect of this child. And then, bless their hearts, counselors are being made available to any student or school employee who have been affected by this horrible tragedy. So this is where the connection with Ruby Franke comes in. As much as so many of us are mad at Kevin Franke for the role that he played, the fact that he saw some of what Ruby was doing before it became as egregious as it eventually got with Jodi. His children were being mistreated, even on their family YouTube channel, not to the point of life-threatening as it was in Jodi's house when their son escaped and then saved his sister. But he did see some bad things, and he should have stepped in. And instead, he drank a Kool-Aid that Jodi was giving and allowed himself to be estranged from his children for over a year. Now, I can argue both sides. I understand why he defends himself and sees himself as a victim of Jodi's and of brainwashing, whatever, trying to do the right thing. I can also see how people think he's an absolute monster. I think the truth is somewhere in between, although I lean toward he's more at fault than even he wants to admit at this point. But at least at this point, he is stepping forward and doing something. So, as I mentioned in a recent video, he made a statement to a committee dealing with these family issues in front of the Utah legislature, saying that it's too easy for people like this to get away with it. If you just isolate the child, like homeschool them, and then you don't answer the door, answer the phone, DCFS kind of has to just close the case. And we need better regulation. Gavin is proof of that. It's one thing, I kind of wondered if Ruby got away with some of this with, police would be outside her house and they could see her through the window, see the kids, and they're not answering the door. But they didn't have cause to think that a child was in imminent danger of losing a life, so they couldn't break down the door as they did in St. George. And finally, that rescued the younger sister. And that was only made possible because the brother had escaped. And I'm not using names, even though they're public. But Kevin's right on that front. It's too easy. And it wasn't because Ruby was wealthy. Gavin's family did not live in a wealthy area. You can see from their house, it's not a big home at all. You've got a crumbling driveway, and it's a very small house, probably built in the 50s. It's a very, very modest area, and West Haven has a population of maybe 10,000. It's more on the rural area of things, definitely not high privilege, wealthy area. So this is affecting children across the spectrum. Kevin's right about this, and if anything good can come from his case with his children and the horrors they experienced, maybe it will be strengthening the laws that will protect our children. At the same time, I recognize that there has to be a balance. I know in some states within the U.S., the laws are so strong that it's almost too easy to take a child from parents when they are actually innocent and have done nothing, with just a simple allegation. I've heard horror stories, absolute horror stories, of children being taken from their families, and it's caused so much harm, and there wasn't anything happening at home to warrant that. So I get there needs to be a balance here, but when we're dealing with children who are conveniently being homeschooled, and that somehow makes it so nobody can then check in on the child and make sure they're actually okay, that's a problem. Several neighbors had a suspicion that this poor boy was being hurt. And again, DCFS couldn't do crap. A spokesman for the Division of Child and Family Services here in Utah said that, we can't publicly comment on any case, of course, because of privacy reasons, but any death is devastating, and all of that. We couldn't have done anything. Please make reports if you suspect anything. Why are we going to make reports if you can't do anything with the report? If the law binds you to the point that you can't actually save a child, no matter how many reports are filed. I'm wondering how many reports were. Because multiple from the school district and then several neighbors. How many? Are we talking 5? More? He wasn't able to escape like the Franke's boy. And his fate was what would have happened to him and his little sister. It's absolutely heartbreaking. Let's get into what was actually happening to Gavin. Authorities found on Nicole's phone, so again, stepmother, deleted screenshots from the family surveillance cameras that were in his room. So they were checking up on him, leaving him and neglecting him, but they had cameras going so they could see what was going on. In the arrest report, it says, quote, in most of the screenshots, the child is only wearing a heavily saturated diaper. He's 12. The child can be seen curling up on the carpetless floor of the room, which lacked bedding or blankets. Several screenshots also showed sores on the child's back. The room appeared to have multiple cameras as the infrared lights from other devices were visible in the screenshots. The photo also showed the door handle with a locking mechanism positioned on the outside of the room. So these are the cameras that Tyler had tried to sneak out of the house and into the shed that the police then found later. Now, a search of all 3 adults' phones revealed that they had text message going back years discussing whether the child victim had been given any food or allowed to use the bathroom. They would discuss hitting and the child, using a piñata stick to do those things. Conversations about, he's had a 3rd cup of water. That's what he would get in a day, a 3rd cup of water, maybe a piece of bread with some mustard, or not feeding him at all. These conversations covered a long, long period. He also was, and this comes, I believe, from the neighbors, that he would be punished by being forced to do hard labor outside in the sun for long periods. Does that sound familiar? Hi, Ruby, Franke, Jodi, Hildebrandt. These are your friends. So, as horrible as a father as I believe Kevin Franke was, I don't think he knew as bad as things got. And I think that's on the one hand, some of that is on him because he didn't know because he left. He's right in that something has to change. And if he and his daughter Sherry, who seem to have reconciled, are trying to lead the charge on changing the laws, I will support them on that. So father, stepmother, brother, all arrested. And here are the charges. All 3 of them were charged with child homicide. 2 counts of aggravated child. The stepmother and brother were both charged with obstruction of justice. She got 2 counts, he got 1. Father and stepmother were charged with child endangerment, and the stepmother got an additional charge of drug possession. The GoFundMe that the family set up, I believe, says while they await justice, the family is picking up the shattered pieces by planning funeral services and arranging therapy sessions for Gavin's older siblings, who've also suffered from abuse and neglect while in their care. That's from the GoFundMe page. So my question again is, what are the ages of these children? Do they share the same mother as Gavin? Or is it a different mother and she was able to get some of them out of the house? Are they all minors? I have questions and I have deep concerns. Because if this was behavior that was going on for years, how bad was it for these other children who fortunately survived? But it says specifically they also suffered from abuse and neglect while in their care. What blows my mind is it wasn't just the father and his stepmother. It was also a 21-year-old brother. My mind is blown and my heart is broken. We've lost a sweet, sweet 12-year-old little boy. And why? People were sounding the alarm. They were throwing up a UN of red flags. And either no one cared to do anything, or the laws are so pathetic that they couldn't do anything. I think we need greater regulation on Utah homeschooling and probably elsewhere to make sure children are actually being homeschooled. It's done well. We need better regulation on when DCFS can open a case and take action and question parents and do a home study on people's houses and actually check in on a child, do a welfare visit. Dang, the Ruby Franke situation, we saw a case where 2 children fortunately got out with their lives after some pretty heinous stuff that they will be dealing with for the rest of their lives. And now we have a sweet 12-year-old boy, same age as the Franke son when he escaped. Only he was not able to get out of under his parents' control until after he stopped breathing and his organs shut down. And he was pronounced dead at the hospital. And doctors could do nothing. And I'm sure they didn't take him to a doctor for the seizures because, oh no, what if we will get in trouble? Well, I can't imagine you'll be seeing freedom anytime soon. I can only hope. Okay. For that heaviness, oof, drop some chocolate emojis in those comments because I'm gonna need something sweet to cheer myself up. This has been some intense stuff. Let me know what you think. What can be done? What should have been done within the law? Like I don't know enough. I need to research more about the law, I guess, in Utah and elsewhere, because it's horrifying to me that this could even happen. I don't get it. But what can be done? What lawyers out there, like what can we do? And what kind of bills could be put in front of the legislature to fix this? What do you think about the neighbors trying to step in? What else could they have done? I just want to hear, what do you guys think? Yeah, let me know in the comments. Let's have a conversation there. And yeah, if you're still here, appreciate it. Please like the video, subscribe if you're new. And until next time, go get yourself something to cheer yourself up. If that's chocolate, great. If it's not, get whatever it is that makes you happy. But until next time, I'll see my true crime chocoholics again very soon.